Right, let's talk to Kim here.
A bespectacled man in an orange bomber jacket is tapping his foot on the floor. Looks like he's waiting for someone. As you approach, he narrows his eyes and extends his hand in greeting. If an assault were launched on this building right now, if the windows came crashing down and the whole world descended upon you, this man would hurl himself in death's way to save you. You are sure of this, but why?
Don't shake his hand.
Hello, I'm Kim Kitsuragi, Lieutenant, Precinct 57. You must be from the 41st.
Correct.
You realize he is waiting for your name. This is your chance to come up with a really good name for yourself. Get creative. Conceptualize. Concentration makes you squint your eyes. Your name should be deep gold and orange, like a forest fire looming on the horizon, but mixed with the stench of liquor rising from your breath. You're 2 steps closer to it, but there are still many to go.
I like that when we make this check, we don't actually come up with a name, and if we don't, we come up with a ridiculous name. I think it's Raphael Ambrosius Cousteau. It's not yet time.
Okay then. It looks like we had a little scheduling error on Sunday. Saturday too, actually. Have you had time to talk to the manager here?
There must be some kind of misunderstanding. You're taking me for someone else.
No, I don't think so. We should ask him for a rundown of the area, now that I'm here as well. I understand the scene is out back, right?
Kim is such a good character. He's such a good foil for our insanity. And he has his own way of managing us, quite deftly, I might say. Indulging our crazier shenanigans and at the same time kind of keeping us from doing the most destructive things in a subtle way.
It also wouldn't hurt to assure him the police are finally here. In full force, I mean. Have you mapped out the initial interviews?
Let's not show any weakness here. I have, yes.
Good. But even if you haven't, we'll have time for that after we take a look at the coroner's case. Have you removed the dead body from the tree?
Completely.
Completely. Does that mean you took the body down from the tree?
No.
So, the body is still in the tree.
This is the first time you detect a weariness in the
It's not going to be the
lieutenant's
last
voice.
time.
It is obvious he would have preferred for the body to no longer be in the tree.
It's also kind of funny if you like go through all of these dialogue options and everyone is like basically not saying no. So Kim's like, does that mean it's still in the tree? And in the end you have to say no. Even if you start with like, completely, yeah.
Where it has been hanging for 7 days straight.
It's gonna be
We
hanging
should
there a
go
while
there
longer.
As soon as we are done talking to the owner.
What a shame. Get to it now.
Yeah.
Rip that body down from the tree.
Don't worry about the body, I'll rip it down.
After it's been up in a tree for that long, any kind of ripping is inadvisable. After you, officer.
If you're about to embark on an investigation, shouldn't you have a badge?
Wait, shouldn't I have a badge or something?
You mean you don't have a badge?
I have my badge. I'm a policeman. I have my badge.
Oh, if you didn't have your badge, then that would be very bad. You would need to report it on my shortwave. But since you do have it, we can go straight to the task at hand.
Right. Let's talk to Garte. Again.
The man with the unimpressive beard notices you approaching. He drops the ledger he was holding and turns to the lieutenant.
Mr. Garte, right? You run this place.
So this still gives off kind of Frenchy vibes, right? Garte also seems like a French name. Of course, Klaas here is more Dutch. Kim, the name sounds like maybe Korean or something. We don't know what we're called, so...
Yes.
I am Kim Kitsuragi from Precinct 57. This is an inter-district investigation, so joining me from Precinct 41...
He looks to you, realizing he still doesn't know your name. Currently in between names. That's such a good line too. But I'm going to refer back to what we thought of earlier there, right? With our conceptualization check that we passed. What is gold and orange, like a forest fire, but smells like liquor?
Are you kidding me?
No, man, help me out. What is golden orange and smells like liquor?
It's you. It's obviously you. You smell like liquor. And you're orange.
See? Everyone agrees it's your color scheme.
Right.
We're on the right track with this name thing.
I think so too.
Is this what you get when you call the police now? We've been waiting for a week here.
Sir, I understand your concern, but we are here to do a job. And for us to do it, I need you to stay calm.
Yes, of course.
For a moment, the cafeteria manager fidgets under the lieutenant's gaze. Then he gives in.
I know it took us a while to arrive at the scene, but it also took you a while to call us. It was you who placed the call, correct?
No, I only just got here. It was probably Sylvie who called you. She usually works the bar here. I'm only temporarily taking over her duties.
Do you have her number?
As a matter of fact, I do.
He looks behind a pile of coasters, finds a slip of paper and hands it to the lieutenant.
You said you just got here. From where? Are you a local?
So obviously there's no cell phones in this, right? Which would indicate that our initial impression of this being like the 1960s or 70s in a lot of ways and also technologically seems to hold true. So there's phones but no cell phones. Okay.
What, of Martinez? No. I live in Jamrock. I only sometimes come here to keep an eye on the place. This is just one of the many, many cafeterias I manage.
But you still know your way around, yes? In case we need directions.
Yes, I know where some things are, but as I said, I don't live here. I just used to work here. And I'm not going to start working here again, if that's what you think.
I didn't imply that. Detective,
What?
it's your turn.
No, I'm good.
The body was behind the building, right? How do we get there?
Behind this building, there's a courtyard. They hoisted him up on a tree there.
And how do we get there?
See that door there? Go out and turn right. There's a big hole in the fence. No need for a key. Just go through that hole and you'll be in the courtyard.
I mean, we can't know this at this point in the game, right? But the way he says this, he pauses and sighs. There's a big hole in the fence. Obviously that hole isn't supposed to be there. It's there because there was some accident, and of course that was us, as we're going to find out a lot later. We did have a police car. It's mysteriously vanished, but we, probably drunk, drove it around aimlessly in the courtyard of this hostel, smashed the door to the backyard, or the fence rather, and a couple of other things, and then crashed violently. So that happened, and he's like, okay, I'm not gonna make a fuss about this now. I know it's the guy who's right in front of me, who is a police officer, who's responsible for this, but just breathe in, breathe out. There's a big hole in the fence. No need for a key.
Are you supposed to feel guilty about the hole? His sigh tells you, yes.
Let's go.
Not so fast. You owe me 130 real.
What?
No one is saying the multi-pattern necktie you found tied to the ceiling fan can talk. No one. It must be merely Imagination.
But
Let's bail! Time to push the eject button! Sounds like a responsibility! You don't
That's
like
right.
those!
so we're maximum anti-responsibility in this playthrough. We're also, of course, as corrupt as we can be and as lazy as we can be.
No, don't listen to him. It's madness. Just talk.
I mean, this is gonna fail, but I don't owe you shit.
Oh, you don't owe me shit. Well, officer, you're right. You don't owe me shit, you owe me money.
We do not need to assert ourselves here. We only need instructions from him. This is the proprietor, remember?
He didn't call me that, but I'm gonna say it like anyhow.
But you see, he didn't.
Kim, you're being very observant.
You know, I get this all the time. Some hobo comes in here or some backpacking arsehole off the boat.
Those are
The
the
next
worst.
day, when they can't make their fees, they get aggressive. I just never thought I'd be in this shit with a cop. Please, just give me the money.
In the end, that's all he can do, right?
Who does that clown think he is? Arrest him!
Did I just hear my tide speak to me twice?
No one is saying that! No one is saying that Ty can talk! That would be ludicrous! It's just that you should arrest him! It would be wiser! He wants to take your money!
Great advice, I'm considering it.
The lieutenant looks at you tugging on your garish tie. He puts his hand on your shoulder.
If you don't have the money, it's okay. None of us are in this for the wages.
That's cop 4. I haven't offered to pay because I don't have any money either.
Right. So... Damn, I wanted to try and run away. I hope I can do that later still. What do I owe this place for? No, you're under arrest.
You can't arrest me. I haven't done anything.
Damn, really lost your nerve before. That's bad. Our authority is usually pretty good. Put this man in his place.
The words leave your mouth as if walking up the stairs. Everything is going fine until you reach the end and take one step too
I
many.
fucking well can, bitch.
Oh, so apparently I'm a bitch now. Okay, I'll be the bitch, and you'll be the broke cop who owes me money. And no one will arrest anyone because that's insane. How's that?
Sir, leash in your tongue.
The lieutenant's voice is controlled yet threatening, like it's coming from a different person. Is he addressing Garte or is he addressing us with Sir Leash in your tongue? I think he's addressing Garte, right? Because he wants to present like a united front with us still.
The words nail the cafeteria manager
Yeah.
to his place. Unmoving, he stares down at the counter with his cheeks reddish.
Officer, you need to contact your station. Ask your people for assistance with the money you owe this place. There is a shortwave radio in my car. When you get the time, use it. We need to get this investigation started now.
I'm sorry, but I can't let him stay here if he doesn't pay. He's 3 days on the slip. If he doesn't have the money by tonight, he'll have to work this from home.
This is gonna give us Hobocop, I think, right? Is there someone else I can stay around here?
You can look, but the union squeezed most people out of business to fund the strike. So, I don't know, your best shot is just going home.
Fuck this place. I'll take my chances on the streets.
No, there's no need. Let's go. Goodbye.
The cafeteria manager stands silently behind the counter, his eyes fixed on the broken taxidermy, then on the ledger. He does not know what to say.
Quite understandable.
By the way, where is home? The address is coming up blank, and this place sure isn't it.
I've no idea.
But you've been at this hostel cafeteria for only 3 nights. Where were you before? You had to be somewhere.
Up on Marvel Hill, whatever that is.
Why did you say that?
Lieutenant Kitsuragi, do you know a place called Marvel Hill?
No. But isn't that an expression, not a place?
An expression.
A saying. Up on Marvel Hill, a great high place. One that is impossible to climb back to.
That doesn't sound like somewhere you can stay if you run out of money.
I'll live in a dumpster, I don't care. Fuck everything. Hobo cop.
Entertain the thought when you get the time. Maybe being a hobo and a cop has its advantages.
Superstar hobo cop. -1 composure. Ungainly and rambling. A cop and a hobo cop. Upsides, can be disheveled, doesn't have to wash, carries himself with lurched gusto. Hobo cop doesn't need anyone or anything. No one can kick you out because you don't have a home. Never pay rent again. Never even hear, "You're drunk. Why did you even come here, Harry? Go home. You're embarrassing yourself." Downsides, are there any? I mean, seriously, give me one. Also, Harry. I didn't know you could find out your name this early on. Let's talk to him again.
Can I help you?
So about that money I owe.
Yes. Have you got it?
How much do I owe you again?
A lot. For the room, drinks, and broken window, 130 real. Like what? What thing?
I saw a sign that said the mess hall is reserved for the union.
Yes, not the whole damn union, thank God. Just the nastiest and loudest faction.
He tosses his head in disdain.
They come here in the evenings. Dumb, unruly types. Think they're big shit. But they're good customers. They place big orders and always pay on time.
Not like he means.
He hates the union, but grudgingly recognizes its power over him. So he's directing his frustration at you instead. Retaliate.
I mean, he has a good reason to direct his frustration at me without the union being around, but poor Garte, right? Not only does he have to deal with a cop who doesn't pay his bills and thrashes his room, but also with these union guys who don't really give him a break. You're above gratuitous baiting? No, we are not. It is a shame you've got to suck up to the union to stay afloat.
I don't. I'm simply providing a service, or really facilitating the offering of services to paying customers, and it doesn't matter.
You insinuating
I don't have to
something?
explain myself to you.
He runs out of steam, yeah.
We should find out who this Lord faction is, occupying the booth. Loudness means talkative, and we need info.
Lieutenant gives you a meaningful nod. How do we find them?
We don't. We have to wait. They'll show up sooner or later. Men get hungry, even striking men. If not today, then they'll be here tomorrow.
Garte, I saw a sign that said I couldn't go into the kitchen. Why can't I go into the kitchen?
What are you, a cook now? That's none of your business.
I have a search warrant.
No, you don't.
You better believe it, fucker.
Fucker. Lay off the swear words. They don't make you cool. This isn't kindergarten. Besides, the RCM doesn't do search warrants. I know the law. You'll just have to wait for the kitchen to open. If you have to get in there, which you don't.
Wait, the RCM doesn't do search warrants? That's inconvenient.
What?
You feel like you should come back to this thing-based questionnaire if you see anything interesting in the whirling later.
By the way, I'm going to sing karaoke here.
Absolutely out of the question.
You wait and see, cafeteria manager. Absolutely in the
Yeah.
question. First we find
Question.
a sad banger. Then we sing this place to shit.
I love that voice actor. Okay, hey Kim, how's it going?
Yes?
Tell me about the case.
What do you want to know?
If we're from different precincts, then why are we on the same case?
I'm afraid you and I are pawns in a pissing competition.
His disdain is clear. This man would not use such an expression otherwise.
What do you mean?
You don't know? I assumed you were in on it.
Tell me about it.
It's just stupidity. We shouldn't waste any more time on it. If you want my take, ask me after we've inspected the victim.
You should tell me now, this seems relevant.
Later. Was there anything else you wanted to know about the case?
Will you say this is a mysterious case?
No, It's not a particularly mysterious case.
Why not?
The deceased is a security guard for a corporation involved in a labor dispute. It doesn't take a DeLorean polymath to put the pieces together. I just don't see the case getting more mysterious than that.
Still, this could be set in the real world, right? Real world 50s, theoretically. We know March 51. There's more words that are kind of mysterious and that sound familiar, but not entirely known to us, like DeLorean. Is that some reference to some philosophy or some school of thought? It's not something that exists in the real world, but it sounds like something that could. Okay, so this case probably isn't mysterious, but could it be sexy?
There was some interest in this case at my station, but not for the reasons you have in mind. You seem to wish there was a...
Cut this boring stuff off immediately. You know what this case is about.
You sure there's not some sex angle we should be considering?
Good point. Martinez is famed for its occult sex murder rights. We'll get on it immediately.
I mean, it's definitely murder, or at least a body. Oh really? That's mega sexy.
No, not really. Was there anything else?
He's just completely unfazed.
He's basically challenging you to sex it up with some
Yeah.
real twist. Don't get right into it. Sit on it a bit. Then hit him with it.
Okay.
Good.
Inland Empire. Oh, 15 is very high. I want to talk about... You seem to be following me.
Excuse me?
Beat it, you're cramping my style.
Frankly, Detective, you're in a deranged state. I can't let you proceed without close supervision. In fact, under normal circumstances, I'd be duty-bound to report you. Take it as a token of good faith between our precincts that I haven't done so.
Slight bit of threat in his statement here, right? You don't often get Kim to this point, especially because most players, understandably, are super nice to Kim. But he can become a bit testy, and he does push back at some point if you're too hard on him, which I plan to do in this playthrough as hard as it is. And as I said, right, power dynamics between characters. This game is very conscious of that. And it's very conscious that Kim and you are the same. You're both police officers from different precincts, yes. But you have the same kind of authority, and Kim doesn't have to indulge your shit if he doesn't want to. It's just that he's like a very level-headed and calm guy, and like duty and the investigation come first for him. And up to a certain point, he'll like present a united front with you even if you do crazy stuff, because he wants to like not undermine the authority of the RCM in total. And he would like start breaking away from you at every point and just saying to people, sorry about him, he's crazy. Then that would undermine the authority of the entire investigation, right? Because how would that reflect back on the RCM if even he would acknowledge that the people they're sending are crazy? So that's why he kind of puts up with you in front of others, but if you push him too hard one-on-one, he will push back.
The lieutenant
Very,
thinks you're
very
some
well written.
unaccountable
Very
wreck who
believable.
needs constant supervision. But you don't have to listen to him. You're free to disobey.
You don't need to supervise me, Kim.
Except that I do, Detective.
But what if I do need some me time?
Some you time? This is a police investigation, not a journey of self-discovery. You'll still have your evenings to yourself.
On second thought, maybe I need someone to cramp my style every now and then.
You might. It's important not to let one's style interfere with their work.
I want to talk about you.
Me? I don't see how my life is pertinent to the investigation.
Oh my god. This is not easy to say, but I will say it. You're right. What's there to know about a lame binoclard?
Binocular? Is that how they do things over at the 41st? No wonder your clearance rate is so low.
Let's try this. Convince Kim there's a sexy dark mystery twist to the case.
Only banal things strike you. At the core, you're a very banal person
Aww.
with a very small soul. One you should be ashamed of. It's no wonder the soft one doesn't want it back. It was right to abandon you.
The soft one. Nothing. So, the pissing competition. Find out who's in the union box. Pay for damages. Who may the core reporting the crime? Report your badge missing. Inspect the victim's body. So, next up, Lena.
Hello again, sweetie. I see you've met up with your colleague.
The lieutenant nods politely.
Does that mean you like me?
You're a handsome man, officer, with your mustache and your chiseled jaw and that silly dimple on your chin. But dear, you're not for me. I'm too old and too married besides.
Once again, Lena has a different way of handling us, right? Of course, that was completely inappropriate to say as a police officer, position of authority again. But she actually responds by flattering us and diffusing the situation that way.
In another time and place, she might have flirted back.
Yeah.
But that ship sailed long ago.
You must forgive me. I'm getting so scatterbrained. I completely forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lena. My husband Morel and I are staying with our friend Gary just down the street, but
Gary, you
I come
say?
here for tea when they're away.
Her eyes glitter over the rims of her glasses as she looks up, smiling.
This Lena is wacky enough for the motley crew. Hire her on the spot.
Sweetie needs money. Do sweeties get money?
Oh, sweetie, I heard your conversation with the manager about your financial troubles. When do you get your next paycheck?
If she could, this woman would feed and clothe you and every other sad, lost person on this earth. You've got guns of steel and a chiseled jaw somewhere under the bloated alcohol layer. Maybe she'd like to sponsor you.
You understand Lena's idealism. Ooh. I was hoping you could be my sponsor.
Oh, I'm sure you would make a wonderful gigolo, dear, with those
Hello.
strong arms of yours, but welfare checks aren't all they cracked up to be. My husband and I are barely scraping by.
So you're on welfare, right?
She's not really lusting after those biceps, man. It's more like an appraisal you give to a healthy specimen.
Yeah. And I would actually say it's still her way of diffusing the situation. Like, we coming on to her and, like, abusing that. And she's like, okay, I'll play along a little bit. I haven't seen any paychecks.
You must be joking. Although our pay does sometimes feel like a joke.
It's not easy to assert your right to a decent living wage when you don't have a strong union behind you. Maybe you should talk to Everard, the union leader.
So she's pro-union. Also, one thing I like about this game is the characters in it. I mean, almost everyone is more sympathetic than we are, right? And it paints such a broad and diverse set of characters. And it doesn't shy from making... And I say this as if it was something special, and it is, because frankly, not many media do this. So it doesn't shy away from making very poor lower class characters very sympathetic. And usually in media, I mean, sometimes there's like rags to riches stories, right? In which poor characters are framed as sympathetic, but only because they have like this will to advance, and then they make it by their own power, and in the end they're like not where they started, right? It's a very like neoliberal take on human nature. It's like, if you just try hard enough, if you have the will, you can make it in any system, right? And not so in this game. In this game, there's just haves and have-nots, and that's usually the result of a very unjust system. And some people just have more power, and they abuse it in all the ways that they can. And that is true for both Everard, of course. That is true for Joyce. That is true for us as police officers. And then there are some people who are just lower class, like Lena is, living with her husband on welfare, and yet they are like framed as interesting and like even lovable and complex characters, and I like that. We'll try to get some money here, though.
Your deportment remains dignified as you shed a single manly tear.
It isn't easy for me to ask this of anyone, but I'm at the end of my rope, and money, any money you have could help me.
Sweetie, I only have a few cents on me, but I could give you this to pawn. Just to
What do you
tide
pay your
over.
tea then with then? She unfastens a gold commemorative pin from her left jacket pocket and drops it into your palm.
Wonderful. He has a pin.
The lieutenant remarks drolly.
The pin is round and slightly tarnished. 3 sailboats in bas relief with the sun hovering over the water behind them. A chipped green banner at the bottom reads, San Baptiste, Summer 31. Dinghy races.
Where can I pawn the pin?
Cross the plaza and follow the road along the coast. Down by the water, there'll be a shack nestled against an old stone facade. That's the pawn shop. An old friend of my husband's goes there often. He says the owner is quite helpful.
Who's that old friend of Morel's? Is that someone we can meet in the game? Is that Gary, maybe? This will help me out, Lena.
You're quite welcome, dear. I hope you were able to pawn that old trinket. Of course, dear. I just wish I could have done more.
You seem to be in a chair. Let's be completely insensitive here.
Yes, dear. I'm a paraplegic.
Could I become a paraplegic?
I hope not. Although the work you are doing for all of us is quite dangerous.
Her eyes glimmer with admiration as she looks up to you.
Towering over her in your insignia, you make her feel safe.
That would make her safe, but we're gonna say the asshole thing here, of course. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad hanging out in a chair, playing pinball.
Actually, this machine is broken.
What is a paraplegic?
It means I can't use my legs. I was in an accident some years back, injured in the line of duty, as they say.
You're a rugby player?
Oh no, far from it. Although, I did come out to watch the boys play when I was in school. Oh, those tan calves.
Bonk. What did you do then?
I was a training and development manager at a rapidly expanding mail order shoe company.
Wait. Was she part of some multi-level marketing scheme?
You'd think it would be a safe job, but I had to be everywhere, and, well, once I happened to be under some faulty scaffolding. I was lucky. This was almost 20 years ago, and I was compensated exceptionally well. One can only dream of such payoffs nowadays.
She runs her hands over the chrome wheels of her chair. So she says she was compensated exceptionally well, but apparently not well enough that not being able to work after didn't present a financial challenge for her, right? She's on welfare now, even if she was compensated back then. which was probably enough to buy the wheelchair, but not enough to live on for the rest of her life. And things seem to be even worse nowadays. So not only is she like a poor lower class person, but she's a poor lower class person who's... How should I put this? Who is like completely a victim of her circumstances, right? It's not often that we get to see characters like that, and I think that's pretty cool. And that is not to say, by the way, that most poor people are not in some way a victim of their circumstances. I don't mean to intend at all that anyone who is poor just hasn't, you know, worked enough or whatever. But that's a concept that's very ingrained in a lot of culture. And that's one of the ways culture is, and video games too, are inherently political, right? This rags to riches morality, this neoliberal, you can do it if you just want it enough, if your work ethic is strong enough. That's so all over culture that even though if you think there's no politics in your games or whatever, I assure you there is. And this is one of the aspects that manifests. And this game is refreshingly different, where it's like, yeah, the system oftentimes just screws you over, and there's nothing fair about that, and you couldn't have done anything better, and still you're in a very bad position at the end.
No problem.
There is no bitterness in her voice. She accepted the curiosity her condition inspires a long time ago.
How'd you like to roll with me? Another very insensitive thing to say.
Whatever do you mean?
I mean, it could be fine if we knew her a little better and we knew this was her, like, kind of humor of tackling this, right? But just, like, out of the gate, coming up to someone in a wheelchair, being like, yeah, how's it rolling? That's super bad. I want you to be my wheelchair partner in fighting crime, ridding backyards of corpses, catching sequence killers.
Sequence killers? Oh my. But I think you already have a partner, sweetie.
Yeah, he's useless.
A partner who needs you to help him get a corpse down from a tree.
I know, but there's also side mysteries, sequence killers and forays into the paranatural.
I can assure you, with absolute certainty, there are no sequence killings taking
How do
place
you
in
know
Martinez.
How do you know that?
Now, gentlemen, no need to squabble. I wouldn't be of much use to you anyway, sweetie.
Why? 3 heads are better than 2.
Thank you, but Martinez isn't the most wheelchair-accessible place, you see. I'd slow you down. Perhaps another time.
Gotta go. Okay, let's say this.
Yes, officer. You look rather dazed. Like a stunned fox. But surely things can't be that bad.
She won't judge you, no matter what you say.
I drank so hard I forgot literally everything.
Oh my. You know where we are, right?
We're dead, haunting each other, we're ghosts.
Now.
She tilts her head as she looks up at you with maternal solicitude.
We are alive. In a hostel called the Whirling in Rags. And the Whirling itself is in the city of Revachol.
So, this is the first time we as a player are like, okay, Whirling in Rags could be a hotel, hostel. But the city of Revachol doesn't sound familiar. It's certainly not any French city that I know. Honestly, I don't know diddly squat about Revachol. What kind of place is this?
How would I even begin to tell you? Revachol is the most beautiful city in the world. We're fortunate to be here, you and I.
Doesn't look beautiful to me.
I haven't seen very many other cities personally, but everyone says so. Revachol is a rare jewel. This city used to rule the world, though it has seen better days.
There's a pause as she studies your expression. You must look quite lost.
Speaking of history, you know what year it is, yes?
Sure, it's the year 973.
You're joking. Try again, one more time. What year is it?
It's a bad year in my late 40s or 50s. I don't even know how old I am.
There. The year is 51, and spring has only just started. I'm sure there are better days ahead.
The lieutenant studies you, rubbing his chin.
Yeah, we haven't really given any signals to Kim before that. We don't remember anything.
I'm beginning to suspect that you might indeed be completely adrift in this reality, thinks the lieutenant. How can it be that bad? Never mind. We're in this now. Outside, the melting snow seeps into the cracks in the walls
Shivers,
and the
nice.
cobblestone streets, all the way down into the sewers. Above ground, the first May bells blossom. You can feel it, a great cold. Then the shiver passes.
I can tell that this is taxing for you, so I'll just ask one more question. What regime are we living under? What mode of government?
And this is, I think, one of the first options in the game where we can actually give a political answer that will influence our the politics of our character. Some kind of democracy, maybe? I don't know what politics that translates to in the game. And as you might know, the political general directions in this game are communist, fascist. Those are the two extremes on the left and the right. And then there is ultra-liberal, which is basically the same as neoliberal or libertarian in our world. And then there is moralist, which is, I'm not sure if I would even call it like SOCDEM or center-left. It's more like dead center, right? It's mixture between like center-right conservatives and center-left SOCDEM policies. Basically, and it's pretty clear that the writers of the game have like obviously no sympathy at all for fascism, but they also, and no sympathy at all for ultra-liberalism, but they also don't have a lot of sympathies for moralism, even though there's some characters who are good people in the game who are moralists, like Kim, for instance. There's a lot of times where it's like subtly implied in the game that the developers see like moralism as kind of a cop-out, as kind of a way of looking at the state the world's in and not taking any meaningful stance to change it, right? There are people who like are happy with the system as it is, more or less, and who don't see anything fundamentally wrong with it. So this might be the moralist answer. This is, of course, the communist answer. Dictatorship might lead you in a different way, but specifically, dictatorship of the proletariat is a Marxist term, of course, where, and I could go on a bit of a tangent here into Marxist theory. Dictatorship of the proletariat is basically not at all what it sounds like, right? Keep in mind that this term was coined in the 19th century, so way before the fascist dictatorships of the 20th century. And the term dictatorship didn't have the same connotation back then that it has now. Dictatorship was a term that classically stems from the ancient Romans, where they had a function in their society, and as you may or may not know, the Roman Republic was a highly institutionalized system where power and the rule of law were like enshrined in very complex ways, and you couldn't just exert power without any checks and balances. Quite the contrary, the system had like a lot of ways to make sure that no one would become the sole arbiter and ruler over everything. obviously the Roman Republic collapsed at some point and became an empire, as we know, but that was very much against the spirit of the Republic that existed for a couple hundred years and was a result of the Roman kingdoms, which obviously had this absolute power in the hands of a few. So, nevertheless, like beside all those very complex rules, they didn't even have like one single head of state in the Roman Republic. They had consuls, but always two at the same time, which was born of the idea that no one should have this much power, even though the power of the consul was still quite limited by the Senate and by other institutions. But no one at the head of state should have unlimited power. There should always be two who check each other too. So in a way, that's like more, there's more checks and balances that many democratic systems have today, right? So there were two consuls and lots of other things. But at some point in the Republic, the Romans also came up with the concept of a dictator. And the dictator was basically appointed by, I think, the Senate. And the dictator had a way of like cutting through all that red tape and just making decisions on his own. Because the Romans at some point recognized, sometimes in a period of crisis, we might need a person like this, because our rules have become so complicated, and we're proud of our rules, and usually they work very well. But in a period of crisis, we might need to have someone who can like cut through all these rules. But this someone is appointed by the Senate for a certain amount of time, after which these powers end, right? So even the dictator wasn't like a dictator in the 20th century fascist sense, where you just had absolute power for life. It was like it was still a very restricted and institutionalized role. And I'm just setting all this up so that the Marxist term, dictatorship of the proletariat, becomes a bit more clearer. I mean, obviously dictator back then was still connoted with like having lots of power, but it wasn't connoted with the flagrant abuse of power and the suppression of minorities and the killing of innocents, as it has become after the 20th century. So what dictatorship of the proletariat means, specifically in Marxist terms, is that it means a turning around of the power structure in society. Because what Marxist theory posits is that there is basically two classes in society, right? There's the proletariat, which is the workers, and the workers are defined as everyone in society who, in order to survive, has to sell their labor. They don't have any, inheritance or they don't have any wealth they can just live off. They're poor enough that they have to work all the time and have someone pay them for their work so they can pay their bills, right? And obviously that applies to a lot of people, and I still think it's a valuable concept today, because a lot of people who wouldn't think of themselves as working class nowadays are actually workers in this definition in Marxist theory. Basically 90% or 95% of the population. Like some people who have a bit of disposable income, they might put some money into into the stock market or whatever, but it's not their main source of income. Like the vast majority of the population, they survive by selling their labor. So that's the working class, or the proletariat, as it's called in Marxist terms. And then there is the capitalist class, which is opposed to the working class in their interests. And the capitalist class does the opposite. They don't have to sell their labor in order to survive, but they use their capital, so the money and the assets and the wealth that they have, to create more wealth. And they do that by either engaging in financial speculation on the stock market, or by buying real estate, or by making companies, right? And then if you make a company, you have all the workers that you pay for their labor work for you to create all your wealth, and you're not putting in your own labor in the way that someone else pays you for it, but you put in your capital, right? So that's the difference between the capitalist class and the labor class, or the proletariat. And obviously those two classes have opposing sets of interests, right? The capitalist class will always have a set of interests that includes low wages, that includes low protections for workers, be it from disease or injury in the workplace, because all of that stuff costs money for the capitalists, and it cuts into their profits, right? So they have an interest in keeping wages low and keeping these standards low. The workers, on the other hand, and that's basically 90% or more of society, so most people, they have an interest in high wages, in high workplace standards, in rules that prohibit child labor, for instance. They have an interest in having a good bargaining position as opposed to their employers, which usually means being organized in a union so you can engage in collective bargaining, because every single worker is never as powerful as every single capitalist is, right? There's fewer capitalists, they control the capital and the means of production, so they have more power than the workers. So in order to achieve a balance between the two, the workers will need to organize into groups or blocks or unions, right? To have a common way of negotiating with the capitalists who are more powerful. So there's opposing sets of interests, and I think this analysis very much holds true into modern times, where there's people who have to sell their labor to survive, and obviously in societies like Europe that have some kind of social democratic structure to their society, this is a bit ameliorated by social safety nets. So you're not going to die if you don't work, but you're going to have it much worse still, right? So most people still have a very strong incentive to work. And even if you invest a little bit in the stock market or whatever, this is not usually most people's main source of income. So most people are workers still. And this whole concept of middle class or whatever is absurd from a Marxist point of view. Because from a Marxist point of view, there's workers and there's capitalists. And these are very clearly defined, and from these definitions follow very clearly defined sets of preferences and policy positions. So this was a very long way of saying the dictatorship of the proletariat. The concept says that in the society we live in under capitalism, capitalists, although there are a lot fewer than the workers, due to their accumulated capital and due to their control over the means of production, have the lion's share of power in society. And this is not just, right? Because in a democratic society, or in a society that aims to be humanist and aims to maximize happiness and use and wealth for the biggest amount of people, that would mean that the opposite should be true. That society should be structured so that workers have most power because they're in the majority. This is what dictatorship of the proletariat means. It doesn't mean dictatorship like Nazi Germany. It means the power should rest with the majority of people. In this case, specifically, what we define as workers. And even then, in socialism or in Marxist theory, this dictatorship of the proletariat is not the desired end goal, right? Because the desired end goal is not that the proletariat lords over the capitalists. The desired end goal is that the opposition of those classes ceases to exist, and that everyone is just a human and not either a capitalist or a worker, and this antagonism vanishes. And that's the ideal of communism, at least. is that in the end, we aim for a society that is classless. That means it doesn't have the classes of workers and of capitalists anymore. And we aim for a society that is stateless too, which is also a common misunderstanding of communism often, which a lot of people have rightly criticized, really like existing communism or existing socialist or communist states for, that they're very much state-oriented and a lot of power rested with the state. But in communism, the end goal is actually quite the opposite. It's the abolishment of both the classes and the state in the end. But communism recognizes that as an intermediary step, we will have to turn around power structures in society, and we need to give power to workers before we can abolish the class system altogether. And just shortly, so the end goal is not a dictatorship of the proletariat, it's an intermediary step. And in the end, the abolishment of the class system and the abolishment of states and of everyone in the entire world becoming like this is the same in means and power. And that doesn't mean like exactly the same, but everyone has the same opportunity, is worker-owned, and this is going to become relevant in this game too, is worker-owned companies, cooperatives we call them, right? They exist in the real world too, and they're often very successful. Spain, for instance, has a very big tradition of worker-owned companies that are very big, sometimes tens of thousands of employees. And also the Emilia-Romagna in Italy is a region that has a very strong communist tradition. It's a region where Bologna is. And it's still one of the most industrially advanced and wealthiest regions of Italy, with a standard of living over like a lot of parts of Germany. They have a very strong tradition of cooperatives as well. And basically the concept is that every company is not owned by like a distinct class of capitalists who just own a lot of money and that way can get control over a company and tell everyone what to do, tell the company what to produce, tell the workers how much vacation time they're getting, what the safety standards are, decide whether to relocate to another place where cost of wages is lower. In a cooperative, capitalists can't do that because the company isn't owned by a few capitalists from outside the company, but it's owned by the workers who work in the company. And every worker has exactly one share. So every worker has exactly the same say as every other worker. And if you have, like, say, a company, a cooperative of 100 workers, everyone owns a share. Everyone has 1% of the control of the company, and everything. Like, of course you can like elect a board of directors or whatever, like you could in a regular company in capitalism. But at the end of the day, power is shared equally. And the workers can democratically decide whether to raise or lower their own wages. And of course they're not stupid. They're not going to set their wages to a point where they know their cooperative is going to fail. They can also communally elect a board of directors that sets wages and trust them to make the right decision, but they can also, remove them democratically if they want to, as opposed to a company in capitalism where a board of directors can also be chosen and elected, but votes are very much weighted by how much stock you hold in that company, right? That means the richer you are, the more company influence you have in a company in capitalism. Whereas in a collective, every worker has the same say. And this is going to be coming into play in this game very much so too, where the union, the Débardeurs Union, who's striking against Wild Pines, which is the capitalist company in this case, one of their demands is every worker a member of the board. And in a way, this means the union strives for Wild Pines to become a collective where every worker has the same say as everyone else. And there's lots of, like bad takes on this, on people saying, "Oh, stupid workers! They could never decide what would be correct for their company or whatever. They would always make wrong decisions, give themselves too much vacation time, set their wages too high. Companies could never work like that." But in the real world, they have, and there's lots of cooperatives in the world who are very much in competition with other companies, and it does work. It's just a different way of, and communists would argue, a much better way of structuring companies and in the end society. And do you see how that would resolve the class difference between capitalists and workers, right? Because it would mean that every worker or every person who's of a working age, basically, could be part of a company that way. It could have the same say in that company as every other worker. And if you leave one company, you could join another. But in the end, there's no like external entities who just come in with capital, buy up companies, and then extract value from them and screw over workers, right? Because every decision is made by the workers themselves, so hopefully it's in their own best interest. Yeah, so basically that was, if you want to believe it, a very short and simplified version of those concepts. But yeah, so I'd like to think it's the dictatorship of the proletariat would mean, Harry is saying, according to socialist theory, I hope we're on the way to becoming a communist utopia without classes and without states, right? And power has been inverted in this society where it rests with the majority, with the workers, instead of the minority of capitalists. Our leaders are fierce warriors who traverse the plains on steeds. Civilization cowers before us. That could be the fascist option, I'm not sure. We're governed by intelligent machines that perform calculations to determine the freest market. Everyone hustles and grinds like a badass visionary. That's obviously the ultra-liberal version. Radios are being used to control people's minds. Oh no, this sounds like QAnon. COVID deniers. And distort our perception of reality, concealing our true masters, foreigners and women. No, that's the fascist one. But what's this one then? Like more of a monarchist one, but it's not playing out in the game's systems, I think. We're living under the COP regime. Now I'm gonna be saying the obviously fascist ones. And just as for our very quick, and we're gonna be talking about politics a lot more in this playthrough, but just to illustrate the antagonism between fascism and communism, which is an extremely strong fundamental antagonism. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Hitler was not a socialist, and communism and fascism have nothing at all in common. Actually, they're completely opposed in every way. So, remember what I said, how a socialist or a communist analysis sees capitalist society. It basically says, yeah, there's two classes, capitalist class, working class. Those who own the means of production and have the money to live off their own wealth, basically, and invest in companies and financial products and real estate, and those who have to sell their labor to survive. And those two are diametrically opposed in their interests, and will always struggle for political dominance. But in capitalism, what tends to happen is that money trickles up from the bottom, and the capitalists get ever more powerful. Now, fascism has a very different analysis of things, and obviously it's slightly simplified here, but basically it's true, is that capitalism has more of a naturalist view of society, or essentialist view of society, where it says hierarchies in society are not only real, they are justified. And that's the exact same of socialism, right? Who says the hierarchy between capitalists and working class, first it needs to be flipped and then it needs to be resolved. We want everyone to have equal rights. Fascism says the opposite. Fascism says people enjoy different sets of rights and it's all right that it is the way it is. It's all right that some ethnicities enjoy more rights than others. It's all right that men enjoy more rights than women. It's all right that rich people enjoy more rights than poor people. A stratification of society and unequal power is always viewed as just in fascism, and it's usually justified, quote unquote, by a naturalist or essentialist view of humanity that's saying there are certain things in nature that just make it so that some people are stronger than others. And it's all right if those that are stronger dominate those who are weaker. That refers to, as I said, both ethnic groups and genders, and poor versus weak, or more power versus less power generally. Fascism tends to look at any accumulation of power in society and say, there's probably a reason that's the way it is, and it's probably good that that's the way it is. And even if those concentrations of power need to use violence to suppress weaker aspects of society and to continue their domination, then that's all right too. And of course, history shows us where this philosophy can lead, not only to violent suppression, but to planned and ruthless and industrial genocide on an incredible level, because that's necessarily where such a philosophy will lead. And that's why you can't let anyone ever tell you that socialism and fascism are in any way similar, because socialism is exactly the opposite. It's an essentially humanist project which says our goal is for everyone to have equal rights. And decriers of socialism will often say that socialism tries to make everyone equal, which is not true. It just wants to have everyone to have equal rights. And it looks at power imbalances and power concentrations in society and says the opposite of fascism. And socialism says this concentration of power is probably unjust. And the reason this concentration of power can stay in power is because it exerts violence over weaker parts of the population. And we don't think that's all right. We want the opposite. We want the weaker parts of the population to organize together and equalize power dynamics in society. So that's just these two political strands. And we're going to be talking, obviously I'm biased, but this is still pretty objectively true. This analysis of these two systems. We're going to be talking about ultraliberalism, which is neoliberalism or libertarianism, and moralism later on as well, because they have their reflections in real-world politics, very much so too. But so far for these two. And if you understand these general dynamics, then a lot of other things follow from that in the real world, where you're like, okay, maybe this person isn't like a straight-out fascist, but the way he's arguing, and I'm not gendering this because it's often a he, the way he's arguing, if you take that to its logical conclusion, you arrive at fascist politics, right? And someone who does that a lot, and this is probably controversial on the internet, but probably not if you're like socialist adjacent, is Jordan Peterson, who I would never say openly, you know, he goes completely in that direction. But the way he argues is always from a naturalist or essentialist point of view that basically tries to look to nature to justify existing hierarchies, existing power imbalances in society. What Peterson will do, for example, is say, look at nature. When it comes to gender, look at how women are built, look at how men are built. There's certain truths there. And any power imbalance society has follows from that. And it's not necessarily bad that it's that way. It's just natural, and maybe we should even encourage that. And a lot of his arguments go in that direction. And if you like logically think them through, which he doesn't, he just alludes, right? You end at very nefarious places. But one of the things he also does, and he's an extremely intelligent person, so he gets away with it, he has this rhetorical trick where he starts with these fundamentals that, if you think them through, end in a very bad place politically, but he never completely formulates those thoughts. He never takes them to their logical conclusion. He just lets his audience infer those conclusions and arrive at reactionary politics that way, right? Which makes it very hard to like nail him down on anything. And if anyone ever tries to confront him, like on his sexism or racism or whatever, he always has this. I mean, it's a Mott and Bailey argument, really. He always has this like very seemingly commonsensical statements that he can fall back on, saying, I mean, you wouldn't call me a sexist just because I observe that in nature women and men have certain different biological realities, right? And then of course everyone's like, yeah, of course, I mean, I'd be stupid to not recognize that. And then he's like, yeah, then why are you calling me a sexist? It's like, you're just smearing me or whatever. When what he's doing is very much implying very specific political prescriptions from these initial thoughts of his. But it's always hard to nail him down on this. And as I said, yeah, with a lot of other people in weaker forms than Peterson also, you can recognize this pattern of argumentation. And with Peterson, I think he's smart enough that he notices what he's doing. But a lot of times, people who are like arguing from an essentialist or naturalist point of view, they don't necessarily have bad intentions, you know, or like reactionary politics, but they just follow that train of thought because it seems, you know, to make sense at the time, or because someone else taught them about it, because they've heard it a lot. But it's always worthwhile to be wary. And obviously the proper left-wing stance, if you want to adopt that towards this, is like not saying, of course, there's no like differences in nature, which that's also different for gender and for quote-unquote race or whatever, because there's no basis for race in reality. It's like an entirely made-up concept. That has no scientific reality whatsoever. And this is not even, it's not controversial until you're like some lunatic cuckoo person. There's literally no meaning to the concept of race. So there's no meaningful differences between biological differences between certain groups of people that way. I'm not going to there's like people who have debunked this much better than I have, but this is basically not a scientifically controversial statement at all. It's a bit different when it comes to gender or sex more specifically, of course, right? There's certain realities and differences between men and women biologically, or what we describe as men and women. There's also more complexity than most people would think, and it's not as clear-cut as one would think. But let's say there's more to this concept than to the concept of race. But the left-wing critique of that is not to say that men and women are actually the same, but that it doesn't matter. That we still want a society that has equal rights for all. And the ways in which we are different in no way detracts from that. In fact, it's kind of a logical fallacy to assume otherwise. To look at nature and to look at systematic differences between individuals and to infer from that that a good society would not only reflect those differences, but reinforce them and build a hierarchy based on them, right? Good society, to the contrary, would give everyone equal rights regardless. But yeah, enough of a political monologue. That was quite the talk now. Let's conclude our talk with Lena here. We're going to be saying radios are being used to control people's minds and distort our perception of reality, concealing our true masters, foreigners and women. So, yeah, fascism basically says the different classes of interests that stand against each other are not workers and capitalists, but they are people of our nation and people of another nation. And often fascism incorporates conspiracy theories as well, where people from other nations exert undue control over yours. And your nation is being, overrun, or your nation is not even possible to exert control over its own borders or itself anymore. That's a very common fascist theme.
Oh no, nothing like that, dear. Revachol is a zone of control led by an alliance of foreign powers called the Coalition.
See?
We have
Alliance of
almost no
foreign
government of our
powers.
own, and certainly no matriarchy.
She's trying to avoid the foreigners part.
Yeah.
This is because she's a woman. She may be lying to you.
I don't even know what to say. I'm so disappointed.
It is quite disappointing, yes. A lot of people would like some form of representation. There's talk, but for now, the RCM is all we've got.
If there's no government, how come there are no cops?
Oh dear, this is
There are
troubling.
cops.
You really ought to know that, being one yourself. There aren't any cops in Revachol, not in the traditional sense. The status of law enforcement has been a complicated matter since the revolution. But we should stop for today, sweetie. You look like you need a break. Besides, I'm not the best person to explain the big things to anyone.
She's scared now. She's realized you really are brain damaged.
So another thing about this subclassification by gender or by race that fascists do and structure their hierarchies and their power dynamics in society around is that what a socialist analysis would say, that this is not only wrong, but it's actively harmful, not only because it keeps us from giving everyone equal rights, but also because it's a way for the ruling class, that is the capitalists, to subdivide the otherwise very vast labor class, the proletariat, and pitch them against each other, right? If 90% of the people, give or take, are workers and 10% of the people are capitalists, at some point, of course, the workers would think to themselves, wait a second, we're being screwed here, right? One way to avoid that is to separate them up neatly into, like, quote-unquote races, ethnicities, cultures, different genders, who struggle with each other for supremacy, and don't think too much about the capitalists who really control the means of production. How'd I do?
You didn't do too well, dear. It does look like you're having trouble remembering things. History and places. Remembering reality, in a word. It's very odd.
A sigh. The lieutenant buries his nose in his notebook.
But maybe a fresh set of eyes is what the world needs.
Maybe.
While I'm no doctor, such bouts of amnesia are often temporary, so I wouldn't worry too much.
She means this sincerely. Worrying won't do you any good.
What's this revolution you mentioned?
A defeat, I'm afraid. The people of this archipelago tried to build something new, something different. The rest of the world didn't like it, so they came and ended it. This was 42 years ago.
And Lena's cool. She's not only pro-union, she's also pro-revolution. And again, this is a very interesting thing in this world, is I think the revolution in this world was in, like, around the turn of the century, right? So I don't know if this is referencing maybe like the Russian Revolution, which was in 1917, but it's certainly something similar. It was, this game calls it Communards, but it was a communist revolution that overthrew a monarchy, like it did in Russia, which was obviously an improvement, getting rid of the monarchy. But then the coalition came in, which are moralist forces, or if you want to put it in our world's terms, maybe like the Western world, Western imperialism, Western capitalism, and crushed this revolution. And obviously, Lena seems sad about that. But I'm a cop. Whatever it was hasn't stopped me.
Of course, sweetie. I really don't know how to explain it better.
I'm just a poor woman, she thinks. What do I know of these things? And how can I help you?
Who could tell me more?
Someone more educated in sweeping matters. Maybe you should ask.
No. I'm not an encyclopedia. I won't be a guide either. I'm a detective.
Of course. Then I don't know. Someone rich, maybe? Wealthy people are educated. Though I don't know where you would find a wealthy person in Martinez. Of course, dear. Good luck with your case.
Right. Get a reality lowdown. What do we get here? Oh, the commemorative pin. It's worth 320. This unusually tasteful pin was produced to celebrate the St. Baptiste Summer Dinghy Races 31. It has the warm glow of a well-loved memento, and we took it from her. 20 years ago, 31. Alright, that was a whole lot of talking on my part too, but we're actually way overdue. It's time to end this episode. I'ma see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.